Well, good evening. It is great to see everyone here tonight. A couple months ago, I was in the airport in Dallas. Let me get situated here. I was in the airport in Dallas, and a couple of gentlemen were standing behind me having a conversation. One of them was obviously this big old Texan, big tall guy, cowboy hat, you know, the belt buckle and the boots, and I could tell he was a Texan. And he was talking to this other gentleman, and he said, "Well, what?" He said, "Where are you from?" This Texan asked this guy, "Where are you from?" And the man said, "Well, I'm from Wyoming." He said, "Wyoming? What part of Texas is that in?" This is a true story. And I turned around and looked up at that guy, and he started grinning. He knew he was, he loved Texas. And I can tell you, I love the state of Texas. As a matter of fact, I love it so much. About 4 years ago, I spent my entire off session, my entire summer on into the fall, traveling the state of Texas, trying to help secure your property rights in stopping the NAFTA superhighway from coming up in the state. Michael invited me to speak. He called a few weeks ago and asked if I would speak down here, and I said, "Man, I'd love to." The 10th Amendment, you know, a topic that is near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But he called me back, and he asked a rather strange question after I had already committed to coming. He said, "Hey, Randy, I needed to know something. Do you believe in the First Amendment?" And I said, "Well, sure." We'd already talked about the 10th, so he knew that I believed in the 10th Amendment. And he said, "So you believe in the Constitution? You believe in the First Amendment?" "Yes." "You believe in the right of free speech?" And I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Well, good. I want you to give us one." So this is free tonight. Now, I just want to remind you, you don't want to give what you pay for, okay? I'm going to give a little bit different talk this evening. I've entitled my speech, "Crossing the Delaware." And I want to remind you, back in 1776, December of 1776, the Battle of Trenton was fought. And General George Washington had to take his soldiers across the Delaware to face the enemy at that time, the British. General Washington was not only having to fight the British at this moment, but he was also having to fight Congress in order to get supplies and ammunition and even food and shoes for his troops. He had recently lost 5 previous battles. His troops were demoralized. They were literally starving on the battlefield. But on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, 1776, after already losing 5 previous battles and several thousand men in those battles, what was left of General Washington's ragged army stood in formation on a bitter, bitter cold winter night. And as they stood in formation, they heard the words of Thomas Paine, and Thomas Paine said this: "The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot," in other words, the part-timers, those who are not really invested in freedom, he said, "will in this crisis shrink from the service of their country." But he said, "Those who stand and fight deserve the love and the thanks of man and woman." With those soldiers cold, hungry, discouraged, they reviewed or received a new commitment to their mission. And folks, their mission was freedom. And 2 nights later, on Christmas, they crossed the Delaware to engage the enemy one more time, after already losing 5 battles. The weather was so cold that night that they actually lost 2 soldiers crossing the Delaware. Nonetheless, the Battle of Trenton was fought, and I'm sure most of you in this room already know the end of that story. It was a turning point in the American Revolution. Washington's army that night captured over 1,000 Haitians. And they did this without losing one American in that battle. But you know what, folks? That night, before they crossed the Delaware, that defeated army, they had every reason to shrink back. They had every reason to give up, to shrink back from the service of their country. But evidently, Thomas Paine's words inspired those men to fight just one more time. Too often, it seems in today's world, when things get tough, when the odds of success seem so far out of reach, isn't it easier just to give up? Sit back, stay in the recliner, stay home, hope that someone else gets involved. It's easy to shrink back from the service of our country. But folks, my challenge to you tonight is to renew your commitment this day. Renew your commitment to the mission that we are all on. And that mission is one of restoration. That mission is to restore our freedom. Thomas Paine went on to say that these are the times that will try men's souls. And no doubt every one of us in here tonight understand that these too are trying times. We have problems in this country. We have problems right here in the state of Texas, in the state of Oklahoma. The stock market's fluctuations up and down, 401ks evaporating right before our very eyes, primarily because of decisions made by politicians. billion-dollar bailouts, trillion-dollar stimulus schemes perpetrated on the citizens of this state, the highest unemployment in over 25 years. But I wonder if most Americans today even really understand that what I've just described to you, those are just symptoms of a deep-rooted problem that has got a hold on America today. What's the problem? Folks, we're stuck on the other side of the Delaware. Too many people are not willing to take a stand one more time. We have allowed the politicians in Washington, D.C. to trample on the rights and the sovereignty of our states. And I ask you tonight, are you willing to cross the Delaware to save our country? For the last 234 years, each generation before us has passed freedom down to the next. But this generation that you and I are living in today, we have settled for corrupt politicians. We have settled for reckless behavior. And even worse, we have settled for ignorance from those who are serving us today. Absolutely. Well, folks, America's hope is not in Barack Obama. Our hope lies in we the people. That's where the hope is today. America's future lies within the 50 sovereign states, not within the foolishness of Washington politicians. When governors around this nation begin to understand and realize their responsibility to protect the citizens of their states, when they understand their authority and their constitutional duty to stand with the people and against an overreaching federal government, America's problems will be solved. And it's going to take every one of us to remind them to cross the Delaware and to proclaim the truth and to reclaim what is rightfully ours, and that's freedom.